Hello, everyone. We're here today with Scott Colson. Scott is the father of Luke, one of our players this past summer in 2025 on the bucket list trip. Scott is nice enough to take a few minutes to chat with us, tell some stories from his experience as a parent of an Atlas tennis player. Scott, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Good to see you. Hi,
Likewise.
Ruben.
So let's dive right into it. Scott, tell us a little bit about how you learned about Atlas tennis and just your initial kind of experience with becoming aware of what we do.
Yeah, so the USTA Southern had sent out, as part of their newsletter that there was this summer tennis trip that was being run by Atlas Tennis Tours. And so that's how I sort of became aware of it for the first time and looking into it, you're looking at the various trips that they had offered. They looked really, great for a young kid to go on, where they could be exposed to new cultures while also getting a lot of tennis in. So it seemed like it would be a good opportunity for Luke for the summer if he could was able to do that. That he would get a lot out of it tennis wise and culturally and educationally.
So you first learn about it. We'll fast forward a bit. Luke becomes one of the players that's going to be going on the trip. So you're kind of that's going to be a hallmark of the summer. So in the lead up, what was the experience like? What were the emotions both for you and for Luke?
Well, it was the timing of it was it sort of came sort of right after the school year. So it was one of those things where you're in the school year, and then sort of all of a sudden you're going off to Europe, and so it was like one of those things where he didn't there wasn't a whole lot of time for him to get excited about it because there was so much schoolwork going on. But once that was done, then he was just like we had like a week or two between into school and to get ready, and then it was like those 2 weeks or so, were just everything he was thinking about was what he's going to do on the trip, what he's going to pack, and what his plans are. I mean, he was really looking forward to going over to the UK and seeing Wimbledon, and so he was keeping an eye on that stuff. And so I mean, there was just a lot of excitement with him and the family about this opportunity for him, to go to countries like England, Italy, and the Netherlands, places that are so exciting to go to and to visit. And so he was very excited about that opportunity. There was some sacrifice on his part because he wasn't going to be able to play some summer tournaments that he wanted to play. So even though there was some sacrifice that went along with it, he was more excited about the opportunities that were going to come from something that's totally for him would be a unique experience. He didn't know any of the players, didn't know any of the coaches, never been to the countries. He'd been to the Netherlands when he was really little. So, I mean, it was going to be a totally new experience for him, and he was just excited about that opportunity.
As a parent, what were you hoping for Luke to get out of the experience before he went?
I was hoping that for me, my hope for him was that he would get to experience different cultures and get out of sort of his little bit of his shell. When we grow up here in the U.S. and he plays the USDA Southern tournaments, you sort of see the same things over. Every year. Okay, we're going to do the Rome tournament, then we're going to do this tournament or wherever, and it sort of becomes repetitive. So this was an opportunity for him to, really break out of that mold, go overseas, go with kids that he's never met before, and not really know what each day will be on the trip. And so everything was going to be a new experience. Every day was going to be a brand new day and way to do things. I told him, this is a great experience for you because he wants to go into sports management, and looking at yourself, Ben, and some of the other guys that you have associated with Atlas Tennis, Eric Budarak and Sam Duvall. One is great networking. So if you can go there and make a good impression, have people, like you, want you to be around, that's going to be great for you down the road. And so we looked at it from both the aspect of, the cultural experience, but also some professional development as well. So I think that that was also a really good thing that he was able to go there and meet people that might be able to, he might be working with in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think not a lot of people think about that aspect of it, but we're pretty well connected in the tennis world, so you do get a chance to meet a lot of interesting people. And I know for Luke, as a Kentucky guy, Sam Duvall, who's one of our co-founders, who's an agent for a number of top players, he's from Kentucky, so he was pretty pumped to have the chance to connect with Luke and to meet him at Wimbledon. So there's
Right.
always
Yeah.
cool connections that happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it is funny because, like you mentioned Kentucky, and you don't think of it, as being somewhat connected, but Sam Duvall, he was the agent for Eric Quigley, who was one of Kentucky's greatest players, who's also helps Luke out, is from coaching, and also Luke's main coach, a guy named Mark Q. He worked with Eric Buderak, for years ago, and so we do sort of have those sort of back channel connections, but now we're able to bring those, to the front, and so I think it was great for him to be able to meet those guys and also have some sort of history or some sort of shared connections, to make those meetings have a little bit more significance. So that was pretty neat too.
Yeah, I feel like Luke is already learning how small the tennis world is and
It
how
really is.
how frequently you just run into the same people. But it's, I think, one of the cool things about our sport. So it's great that he was able to have that initial exposure, even though he's, still in high school. Um, so moving towards like the trip starts, Luke comes with us over to the UK. We're in England and then go to Italy. What was that experience like for you following along as a parent?
Well, so we have the app tracking or the location tracking on the phone, and so, when he flies over there, the flights from the U.S. to Europe, they're almost always these red eyes. So, we see him get on the plane, and we see him take off, and you wake up and you check out where he is, and okay, he's in Terminal 3 at Heathrow, and so I, text him. I was like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just, I think he met maybe at the time he had maybe met one or two other kids, and they're waiting for the flight from New York to come in, and so, he figured out, where to go. That's one of the good things about, also being, tennis players is they are pretty independent. They are familiar with airports and travel. And so it wasn't like I had really that much fear of him going over there when he landed by himself. I wasn't that concerned about that he would be able to figure out what to do and where to go and where to meet you all. But, one of the good things was just having, that location tracking on the phone because, I don't want to bug him all the time with, hey, what are you doing? Or where are you at? Or, hey, I'm just curious, are you guys playing tennis now? Where are you at? I can just look at that. Oh, I can see they're playing tennis, at some club in the city, or they're at Wimbledon, or, they're eating at some restaurant. And then you can look at the restaurant online and see, oh, okay, I wonder what he's eating. So, it was kind of fun just to be able to follow, his movements and his activities that way. And like I say, I think you guys had a really good structure in terms of, the quantity of tennis as well as the things that you do outside of tennis. And so, we were able to see that too. So that was always, for us, was fun to follow him along.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that about Heathrow. I remember I was with the rest of the group and we got there and Luke and a couple other players were just hanging out waiting for us because they had landed a few hours before. Completely like they looked like they had known each other for months. It was just they were totally in control, good to go. And it was I felt really good about just how the trip was going to go, seeing how seamlessly everyone kind of just connected. Despite, yeah, coming from different parts of the country, not knowing each other, different tennis backgrounds, different school backgrounds, all of that. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it,
and like I said, and that's always a concern, because the trips are 3 weeks, and you're going over there with 10 or 12 kids that you don't know, and there's a little bit of concern is like, well, is he going to get along with them? Is there going to be is he going to get tired of it? If they're going to want to come home after 1 or 2 weeks, and that like you said, like once they sort of got there and got together, that concern completely went away because the kids were quote unquote normal. I mean, there were just good kids that were there for the same reasons, and they had the same sort of ambitions and what they're looking for in the trip. And so there was nobody on the trip that he was like, oh, I didn't really get along with that guy. It was everybody was completely fine hanging out. I was able to go over there I went over there for the last week of the trip when they were in Amsterdam because I have a friend that lives over there, and one of the concerns I had was like, I just want to make sure, if he's really having a bad time, then maybe this will be a way for him to, maybe get stuff away from it. But he just wanted to go hang out with those guys all the time. So, we're constantly, bringing him, to places so he can hang out with the guys again. And so, I mean, he was totally happy, with the group of kids that were there, the coaches. Say, Coach Chris has, been sort of a mentor to Luke since the trip, and they talk quite a bit, 'cause Luke's going through the college recruiting, and Chris knows a lot of, coaches and stuff, and so it's really been a good, like again, networking and, being able to create new relationships, both with players and with coaches. So it was, all positive from that angle.
Yeah, I mean the benefits and kind of the experience of the trip is not just limited to those 3 weeks, and I think that's a testament to it. The kind of staying in contact with coaches and players and new friends. So that's awesome to hear. That's definitely a big part of what we always want to be the case. You mentioned it. You came over to Amsterdam for week three,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was kind of a unique experience. Not a ton of parents get to actually see the trip happening in Europe. So what was that like getting to be there?
Like I said, Amsterdam is one of my favorite cities. I've traveled for work quite a bit, and Amsterdam is always a place that I like to go. And I've got, a really good friend that I worked with for years ago. So we, their family would come to America and see us. We go there. So it was really a way for me, an excuse for me to go visit them. While at the same time, I love watching Luke play tennis, so I could watch him play when he's playing tournaments and stuff and everything. And so it's really sort of just an excuse for me to go over to Europe for a week and hang out with one of my friends, and just sort of see what was going on with the group and everything. So that was just a lot of fun for me personally, just because I had a great week in Amsterdam. I was staying with the friends, and also seeing Luke play. Some of the tournaments there. And if you're familiar with Amsterdam, they have a park there called Vondel Park, which is sort of like Central Park in New York. It's a big park in the middle of the city. They've got all this activity, but they have a great tennis facility in there as well. And they played a tournament there, and he had some really good matches there, and got to meet some, like the tournament was very high level. There are kids that are there are Dutch kids that were playing it. That are playing in college tennis this year, like Oklahoma State and Oregon and stuff. So it was a great experience to go there. And that tournament, it really brings out a lot of people to the venue. There's a restaurant, a bar. People are there just to watch the tournament. There's a big crowds watching the matches, having a drink, eating some food while they watch this tournament. So that was a really cool experience as far as watching them playing that, and just seeing them interact with the other kids on the trip as well.
Yeah, how would you compare, contrast the tournament experience over there to what you're used to, playing back home?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, typically the tournaments that he plays back home are, weekend tournaments in USTA, and those are, just junior tournaments. They aren't sort of like this city open tournament that you had there in Amsterdam, where, the entire city comes out and there's like 8 different flights for, different levels, and ages. And so, I mean, he played guys, one of the guys that he played, um, grew up playing against Novak Djokovic. So, I mean, he's an older guy, but very high level guy. Then, like I say, there's also players that are currently, playing Division 1 college tennis right now. So, that tournament was very different than sort of anything you'd see in the U.S., where you just have really the entire community in the city would come out and just spectate, and they would have food, have drinks, watch the tennis, and not really know who the players were, but they were just there to enjoy the evening. There's the club there, the bar there. They did a good job of creating an atmosphere. There was music. So I mean, it just seemed like it was like a real event, and there's a tennis tournament going on at the same time. So that was a really unique and cool experience.
Yeah, I love that tournament. I want to play in it myself.
I know he wants to go back next year and play it. Like,
It's
we'll,
it's
we'll try and get you in, but I'm not sure.
Oh man, I really want to. But I
Yeah,
also don't want to gloss over some of the matches he played. There's one in particular. It was just an awesome comeback. What was your experience getting to watch that? Like, tell us a little bit more about that match.
Yeah, it was like I said, the friend that we stay with, that's my good friend there. He grew up playing junior tennis, and he was played on the Dutch, Junior Davis Cup team, so he's a very high level player. And so we're watching the match, and I'm sort of, Luke's he won the first set somewhat easily, and he was up 5-2 in the second, and feeling pretty good about the match. And I was like pretty proud that he was going to have a good win in front of my friend and everything. And then next thing you know, he's down, he loses a set 7-5, and so we go from thinking that you're one game away from getting the match over and move on. And now we got to go to a third set, and then he's down 4-1, and he's down 5-3, and the other guy's serving, the guy's up 40 love, and thinking, well, that's probably not going to happen. So, but somehow he ends up winning the last four games and wins that last set 7-5. And it was, like I say, it definitely was the greatest comeback he's ever had in a match. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, until you do it, you don't have that belief that you can come back from a situation like that. But it was just such a great experience for him to be so close to winning and then so close to losing, yet still finding a way to win at the end. That it's still something that he will think about, when he's playing a tournament and he's down, 5-1 in the third, thinking, I've done this before. It's not over. I just need to win the next game and I can keep going. And so, that experience is, I think, is going to be something that he'll always be able to draw on for the rest of his playing career, because it's just one of those things where it does proves to himself that he can come back from the depths of defeat and still come out on top. And that was great. And I think one of the things that he talked about is about what his mindset was when he was down. And it's like, what do you do? Because you say you always just fight, but you can do that, but you also have to have the right perspective to be able to fight. And I think one of the things that you taught him was that to have an appreciation for where you are and to be grateful of this opportunity and to enjoy the moment. And so I think when he was down, he was able to draw on that and say, hey, I'm here in Amsterdam playing in front of, maybe 100, 150 people. Um, and I've got an opportunity to do something that's different than what I've ever done before in the United States. And so I think that gave him some calmness in that, you know, he can, it's just a good thing to be there. And when you have that, then you don't press as much, and you still have that, you still are able to, keep that perspective that there's more to this than just winning or losing. It's enjoying the experience, and it's enjoying the opportunity. And in that regard, I think that really helped him dig out of that hole, because I think a lot of times he would just be like, "There's no way I can do this. What's the point?" And that 40-love game just goes away. And so this time he was able to turn it around. So I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, it was awesome just to get the chance to watch that, and also to hear kind of that mindset shift. I always preach that the kind of gratitude approach, and there's lots of reasons why, but one that I don't think gets considered is that I really do believe it helps people play better. And I think this was like the best example of
Yeah,
that. So it was awesome to see.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's right. Like I say, before the trip, he had been in somewhat of a slump, his tennis wise. He'd lost probably 5 matches in a row where they went to third set breakers. Not that 5 consecutive matches in a row, but just, leading up to the summer, whenever a match went to the third set, he would get tight. He would just start making a bunch of errors. And, so he sort of plateaued where his level was. When he came back, I think he won like his first 3 matches that went to tiebreakers. And his UTR went, up almost nearly a point in about 3 months. And so he really came back, I think, with a good appreciation and mindset and something, like I say, sometimes it just takes one match, 1 point to turn things around. And I think that's what happened, where he came back just a little bit looser. I think he came back a little bit less stressed. I think if he would have stayed in the U.S. for the summer and played, some of the tournaments he was playing, who knows what would have happened. But I don't think he would have the same perspective and the same mindset for the game that he does now. I think that going on that trip made him really appreciate tennis, and like he realizes that without tennis, he never would have experienced any of that stuff. And so, being grateful to be a tennis player, and it's not just there are some rewards that go along with it. It's a lot of work, but there are things that come that are the fruits of that hard work. And that the trip was definitely one of the rewards from that hard work. And I think that that's helped him come back, strong as a better tennis player since he was there.
Absolutely. My last question for you, Scott, is looking at the experience and more importantly, looking at kind of what's come next. What are some of the ways you've kind of touched on it on court, maybe off court, that the trip you think has impacted Luke?
Well, I mean, he really enjoyed going to the museums, and so that was something that I never really thought he was that into history or that into art appreciation or or those kind of things. And you know, so we were, if we're watching something and, it comes up and he'll recognize an artist or something. And that would be something that you go to the museums in Amsterdam or, in London or Milan. There's some of the things that, his mindset and his worldview has broadened. And I think that's just been, to me, that's been the greatest thing is because sometimes, when you start specializing in a sport, especially like tennis, you get really, inward looking and you just sort of focus on you and your sport and you don't really pay attention to all the educational and artistic opportunities that are outside because like that can't help me with tennis or that won't, do this stuff. And so I think, the fact that, that he had those experiences was able to go to museums and appreciate, just something that he couldn't really ever see in the U.S. Um, it really, or at least in Kentucky, there's great museums in New York, I'm sure. But for him seeing those things, that was also something that I really think helped, broaden his horizons and made the trip even more worthwhile.
That's great. Well, Scott, this has been great. Really appreciate you sharing your experience, perspective on Atlas. It's been a pleasure for me to get to know Luke and to stay in touch with him has been great. I've been enjoying following kind of his journey, and I look forward to continuing to do that and to kind of continuing to stay in touch. But yeah, that's it for now. Again, thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.